and we're gonna take it away. I consent to being recorded, so continue. Okay.
Okay.
Me too.
Just to give everyone an introduction, this is room B, session 1, expanding student access to library materials via e-reserves. Our presenters are John DeLooper, assistant professor at Lehman College, and Michelle Ehrenpreis, a librarian at Lehman College. The floor is all yours.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get started.
All right. Fantastic. Welcome to our presentation. Thank you all for coming out. You've heard already, but I'm John DeLooper here with Michelle Ehrenpreis, and we're from Lehman College, and we're going to talk to you about our project to enhance access to our ebooks and e-reserves using LTI technology. So next slide. So before we begin, it's important for you to understand that LTI stands for Learning Tools Interoperability. It's a technology that allows course management systems such as Blackboard, Desire to Learn, and Canvas to connect with third-party software tools. In this case, the third-party software tool is SpringShare's LibGuides, which is the system we use for our research guides and for our e-reserve modules. And it's connected to Lehman's Blackboard page through the Library Resources for Students link on the left-hand side. We like to think of this as a one-stop shop for library resources. And we are also very excited about this because it's one thing that we can do to help all of our faculty, because we can help them put customized resources with all their classes. They tell us what they need, and then all the management is done by the library. So next slide. So one of the key features that we have through this LTI is access to the library research guides. So you can see here this picture of a librarian. Libraries have been doing research guides for a long time. We used to call them back in the day pathfinders or things like that. They used to be back in the day paper guides to library resources, everything from books to databases to articles that are useful, even research techniques that are used. Right now, we have about 300 research guides that are published, and we use, as was mentioned before, the SpringShare LibGuides platform, and we're able to make them available to students both from our research guides homepage, which is libguides.lehman.edu, as well as from our LTI integration, and we can customize the guides to meet whichever class needs them. And Michelle's going to talk a little bit more about that now.
Okay, so as John mentioned, these research guides are really a feature that the library has been offering for some time, and they're located on the library website and can be found that way. What the LTI technology does is it integrates them, as John explained, into Blackboard. So it's a lot more point of need, and in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, with courses going completely remote, possibility of more hybrid, and even in person, what we've done is we've taken the act of having to find the guides on the library website for the students and put them at the point of need in Blackboard where our students are. So instead of having to go out from where they're already in, doing their assignments, looking to see what they have to do, finding the information for their discussion boards, etc., it's really right there at their fingertips. And we've also customized it so that it's really designed specifically with this course in mind, or if it's not specified, really whatever we think or we've seen from our own research and our experience, what students want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what we call the remote resources guide. So with the LTI technology, we've selected a default guide that will go into every course, every Blackboard shell. So if a professor, for example, an education professor has said, oh, I want the education research guides in all my courses, or just in general, give the education research guide for all education courses, we've gone ahead and done that. But what we've also done is we've created a default guide so that every course shell in Blackboard from all disciplines in our courses here at Lehman, we'll have what we call the remote resources guide, which is in our mind all of the information that they really need from the library at their fingertips. So if you think about it, it's kind of a customized website or a microcosm of our website or a snapshot or whatever term you want to use, really designed at their fingertips. And that's what I'm going to show you now as I go into Blackboard. And I'll also show you where you can see the research guides on the homepage. So I'm going to go log into my Blackboard. And I can see this because I've actually been attached to the course by the professor, though you do not have to be. Sometimes our librarians are embedded in a course anyway as a liaison or as an assistant or helper, so to speak. So this was a course from fall 2020. And in this case, the professor actually requested e-reserves, which we'll get to in a moment. But because there's no longer e-reserves, it defaults back to the remote guide, which is what I'm going to show you. So in a course Blackboard shell, it will be called Library Resources for Students. However, professor can rename it. They usually leave the term library, but the point is it's always there and it usually has the word library, so it's easy to find. But once they're in their shell, they're going to click on that link. They're then going to be taken to the standard message, which they'll always get, basically indicating that they're leaving Blackboard proper and the LTI tool is launching them somewhere else. So kind of, stay, don't be afraid, so to speak. And then they're going to be launched. And now what they see here is a customized page that we created really to tell the students, hey, you're now at a page that's dedicated from the library for information that we think best suits you. So for instance, we have the library's hours, which right now, this is actually tied to the information that can be found on our website. Right now the building is closed, but when the library reopens in whatever shape or form, that will be customized. We also have a link to 24/7 chat. Just context, the libraries across CUNY have always offered online chat for a long time. In light of the pandemic, because of the buildings being closed, remote chat, online chat is really the form of reference. So this is a direct link, and I'll open it just to show you, to our online chat. So right there, again, this idea of students are in Blackboard, they need help. They don't have to go out and find where to go to get help. The link is right there. And it's pretty self-explanatory that it's a link to a librarian to help them. It's also, we also have links to the Bloomberg certification, which is another service we offer. And then in the center is the remote resources guide. And we tell students that this is information about accessing library services and materials from off campus. Now, I should mention that this remote resources guide was created in March of 2020 when the pandemic hit, because we felt that because we weren't going to be seeing students in person and students were going completely remote, they really needed more information at their fingertips. And we're better to have this information than Blackboard, which they're going to be spending a lot more time in because their courses are completely remote. And this guide has really been kind of our soup to nuts guide to the library, particularly during this time period when things are so in flux and things are so changing. So some of the information we've incorporated, I'm just going to go over just to give you a taste of what a research guide contains and what it can contain. Information about chat, as we mentioned, how to access the databases from off campus. Lehman recently migrated to using CUNY First credentials. Other CUNYs use CUNY First as well. Some use other credentials, but this is essentially information on how to access the databases for journals, ebooks, etc. from off campus. A little bit about renewing books because students were getting messages and worrying, do they have overdue books because of the pandemic? They don't, but messages just to give them some kind of satisfaction. This is really something that was very important in the beginning of the pandemic as constant changes were going on in terms of a break for classes and then classes back on and buildings being closed and just really information coming from the president, from CUNY, from all the different departments really at their fingertips. And obviously in light of so much information, we also put in other very good sources of just COVID information. And this will be updated as the campus looks different. Our campus, other campuses would probably do the same thing come the fall when there are more changes to come. We also included a page for faculty because faculty, especially those who've never taught online, this was all new to them and they were really being thrown in. And so we wanted to offer the guidance. This is a little bit about LTI technology, OER, which we've highlighted a lot during the pandemic and beyond. A little bit about textbooks, reference questions, etc. Resources for teaching online, something obviously this conference is going to speak heavily about and has always been important. Textbooks, this is something we're going to talk about shortly. How the library can assist students in finding ebooks as textbooks, where these resources are located, some of the information, free information that's out there on COVID, streaming media, mental health resources. This was something that has really, our college has really stepped up on and we were asked to promote and we want to promote because the library is often seen as a place for information, period, not just library information. And so we want to we take that responsibility very seriously. And we want students to know that the library has other forms of information for them too, and we will help guide you to where you're looking for. privacy, this has come up, and really some of our frequently asked questions. So that's things that, again, students really would be asking, what are the top 10 questions? And it very much mimics what we see in person, which is kind of how we created this as well, but with the idea of what are students looking for in a remote environment. So that's really the top 10 questions. And that's an idea of what a research guide looks like. And just to show you briefly, to see what these guides are before the Blackboard integration, they are all located on our homepage under research guides. And if you do a search here for remote, that guide that I just showed you here will come up. So really the Blackboard, the LTI technology marries it into putting it in a very strategic place in Blackboard. And again, this is all done by us. So I'm just going to take you then to the next slide. And briefly, I'm going to show you, so that was the remote guide of what a default guide, if it's never been customized, you know, if you just want to make sure there is a guide in a course. We've also taken a step further and we've customized guides. So often, every class is different. Professors will come to us and say, you know, my students are really struggling with X, or they have this assignment, or I really need more information literacy about this. Can you make a guide for us that specifies this and elaborates on it? And as John mentioned, we have over 300 guides. So often what we'll do for a customized guide is we'll take one of these and suggest it, or we'll take elements often from any of these and kind of shape it into what the professor is looking for. And this is what we've done for a variety of courses. And just to show you briefly, this is one we did for a course in our Health Education and Promotion online program for Professor Craig Demmer. He specifically wanted, and again, I'm going into Blackboard. I had that link. I'm not showing it to you, but the same link that was just there, library resources for students. Here's the message. And this is the customized guide that was created for him. In his case, his students, master's students, he felt really need information about peer review. They struggle with that. He wants to see more. He wants them to see he's communicating the message to them. They really need more help with this. And I have to mention the fact that we're remote and instruction has not been in person has made this even harder for students. And we see the LTI technology integrating research guides as really another form of instruction as well, especially when classes are remote. There is no in-person instruction, and there may not be time or availability for even remote instruction, depending on how the courses have been restructured. So what we've done for him is we created a guide about what peer review looks like. How do I find peer review articles? How do I verify that? And questions and comments. So really this is designed to be tailored specifically for this course. And we can always make these updates. We can do them ourselves. We can go into Blackboard and change them as well. We don't have to, but really it's the idea of what we think the students can use and what's bare bones, and then what's really above and beyond through our relationships with faculty that we value very highly. Next slide. So now, before we get into e-reserves, I just want to show you one more. So what we've done in light of the pandemic is we've now ramped up heavily in our library the service of offering ebooks, purchasing ebooks as textbooks. This is something that Lehman Library is extremely proud of. Our students are extremely grateful to us for, and something the LTI technology has actually made a lot easier. So what we've done is not only created a guide, but if we've gone ahead and bought an ebook, which now functions as a textbook, we've included it in the guide, so that it's easier for the student to find it. And that's what I'm going to show you here. So this was a guide that was created for our Dean of Health Sciences, Dean Algoria Harrison. She's teaching this section of health course. There's actually 3 sections. It's 160 students. And what we've done is she actually requested that we purchase a particular textbook, which is Essentials of the U.S. Healthcare System, which we were able to as an ebook with a 3-user license. And so what we've done, and I'm not attached to her course, which is why I didn't take you in through Blackboard, but rather I took you directly to the guide, is we've put this guide in Blackboard for her. So not only does it have extremely comprehensive information for this course, such as videos, the assignment itself, the databases, who to contact, the health sciences librarian, journals, but also a direct link to the textbook, which is an ebook that we purchased for the library. So they really are going from click library, 2 clicks, 3 clicks to get to their textbook. Now, of course, this link can be included in the textbook. It can be included in the weekly assignments, but we've included it for them. And what's nice is that other students, because this is a public guide, can also come across it. So it kind of opens up these texts that we've purchased to more as well. And just to show you what that looks like, once they're in, now I should point out I'm being asked to log in because I did not go into this particular one through Blackboard. But if I were, I wouldn't have to. It's also a bonus. They don't have to do multiple logins, something that students don't like, no one likes. It's nice to streamline things. And there is a link to the direct book. And here, again, this is functioning as their textbook. They can download the PDFs. They can This is really a whole other discussion in itself, but briefly, this is their textbook. And this is the way, a super easy way for them to use it and find it. So that's kind of where we've gone with a default guide for any course, really information that they would use, customized guide based on the course, and now customized guide with links to ebooks as textbooks. And now I'm going to hand it back over to John, who's going to talk more about e-reserves. John, you're muted.
You may remember that, thank you, Michelle, that a lot of libraries have had desks, reserved desks, where you could get copies of required textbooks, required articles. These things were generally very popular items that were time limited. You would get them for 2 hours or etc. Now we still do that, but we also have an electronic system for that we call e-reserves. So instead of just books that we buy for the class, there might be sections of books, chapters, particular articles that we have associated with classes, and they are time limited by the semester. So each class is associated with a certain number of resources, and those resources are available only during that semester. And then they are personalized as well. We work with the faculty to make sure they have the materials they need for their courses in our e-reserve system. And we've been doing that for a few years, but with the LTI technology, we've really ramped that up because now we can embed ebooks with the ebooks and other e-reserve materials with the courses. And if we go to the next slide, Michelle will show you how that's done.
Yes, and really, e-reserves has really been the next frontier after ebooks as textbooks as purchases. So if a professor really wants this particular textbook, they've always used it. There really is no way to purchase it as an ebook, or there's really no comparison, which of course this can be for specialized courses or just in general. This is really the next frontier in that we can take, with the e-reserve, scans of the most important chapters within copyright limits and put them into the e-reserve system. And as John mentioned, this is something we've always done, but hasn't been as heavily used, again, because students can go into the library generally and make scans and photocopy the print book. So it hasn't been as important necessarily as needed. Now, because students are online and they cannot go to the library, we've done this. And I'm going to show you therefore what it looks like. So, and this is really a service we've offered to faculty when their textbook is not available as purchased as an ebooks. Here, we've offered to them to make scans of the most important chapters and put it on e-reserves. It is limited based on copyright. It cannot be the entire book, you know, if there needs to be change, but there's flexibility. So we could do chapters 1 through 3 the first week, and then we can take them off and put 5, 6, 7 on reserve the next. And really, students love this because, again, it's a way for them to easily get to their required readings. So this is a course that had e-reserves in fall 2020, and that's really when this initiative ramped up, because as much as we really try to buy ebooks to serve as textbooks, it's not always the case. And this is something that you may have heard at your CUNY library, or you've heard from CUNY librarians in general. So this is a course that has the e-reserves for psychology of these materials. Now, I should point out that before the LTI technology, e-reserves could be found on the library website, but again, you had to, just to show you, you had to go to student help or research guides and then browse them. And then there was a direct link and they had to search for the e-reserves, or they had to go back to the library website, go under student help, go to, actually, I don't think it's under student help, I think it's under find. Yeah. Reserve textbooks and ebooks. It's a process. Not terribly hard, but it's a process. This, however, just to go back, is a whole lot simpler. They go into Blackboard, they click library resources for students or e-reserves or whatever the professor has chosen to mention it, and the name it as, they click, and these are the e-reserves that have been scanned. Again, all the work is done by the library. Really, it's the faculty that just has to fill out the form to say, what do you want on reserve from which chapter? And often, what's nice about this is we have these print textbooks. We've had them all along. It's really no cost for the library. It's really a service that we've offered. And here students have access to them as long as they are on reserve. They are taken off every semester and new ones are added. But that's essentially how the e-reserve works. And again, they can be changed. The professor can tell us different ones. They can put several e-reserves. So if you have required reading, supplemental reading, articles, you can really run the gamut. I should also point out that especially since this conference is EdTech and Bronx EdTech, specifically, this is a lot easier for the professor than having to create their own links. Not that they can't do that, and we know professors, we help professors put direct links to articles or ebooks in their actual shell, but this is a lot simpler. We do the work for them, and we're happy to do it because this is the best access for the students, and this really helps ensure that they have at their fingertips their required readings to succeed in the course. And now I'm going to hand it back over to John, who's going to talk to you about our success.
Yeah, so we've been, during the pandemic year, a lot of our operations have had to change, and the LTI technology has been a key way of making it easier for students to access our materials. So in the last year, 2,929 classes have used LTI integration. Our students have accessed 1,090 e-reserve books or e-reserve materials, and that is a 765% increase compared to the previous year. So it has really been something that students and faculty have responded well to. And to get to our guides, 4,500 students have gone to the research guides. So we think that because this technology meets students where they are, for online courses, they are already in Blackboard. There's a link right to the library. They don't have to worry about finding their way to which course, or if they're searching for it to do a typo, it is right there associated with the class that they are already in. So it's a tremendous advantage, and we've been very happy to work with faculty, and we're also happy to answer any questions you may have about this. And I see in the chat, there's a question from Chica. So the question is, so there's no limit in the amount of students that can access the ebook at one time. Well, Michelle can talk more about this, but that depends on the license.
That's right. So what we've done, I'm actually gonna put up the chat. So let me stop. Oh, that's not video, it's stopping me. I just wanna stop the share. Here, I'll pause share. Okay, there we go. So what we've done, it's a great question. What we've done primarily is try to buy ebooks that have unlimited license. And there is a lot out there. When there is limited, we have, by request of the professor, done a 3-user license or a 1-user license. We prefer not to do the 1-user license because that's exactly what it means. 1 student, 1 time. However, there is a way you can purchase multiple 1-user licenses. We haven't done this, but it's something that we've thought about. And something that we can do. But yes, it is based on the publisher. And I have to shout out OER, especially since my esteemed colleague Stacy Katz is in the audience with us. We've also heavily pushed OER for this reason, because there is no limit on OER. I hope that answers your question.
Right. Any other, I see another question, okay. Any other questions in the chat or from the participants via?
I have a question. And forgive me if I missed this, but what would be the first step to implementing this type of embedding into the Blackboard course?
So from my perspective, the good news is that every course by default has a link to library resources for students, which takes them to a default research guides guide. Beyond that, all of our librarians are subject liaisons, and we work, Michelle and I, with each liaison librarian. If the liaison has consulted with one of their departmental faculty and wants certain materials attached to their course, we will work to make sure materials are included, whether it's a guide, whether it's several guides, whether it's an e-reserve or several e-reserves. But so by default, they will always have access to that remote resources guide that Michelle showed. But beyond that, if there's customized guides, our library liaisons are already reaching out to faculty, or faculty can reach out directly to us. As Michelle mentioned, some of the faculty who she's worked with have done. And then we can get them connected to whichever resources are best for their course.
Chika, I think you also were, maybe to clarify, if you're looking to kind of set all of this up, this is a program. The LTI technology is actually something that other CUNYs have done. We actually began this some time ago. I'm thinking 2 years ago, and it actually all started with it has to start with your Blackboard administrator, Stephen Castellano, who's actually one of the co-heads of Bronx EdTech, was extremely gracious, and he worked with us. Essentially, it has the clearance from CUNY. We are doing it as well as Baruch, Hostos,
and York.
And I'm sorry?
And York.
And York.
And York is the other one.
And York, as we know of, that are doing it. So the technology definitely exists. If you want to get started or have it at your campus, the first person to speak to, besides obviously the librarians and consensus, is we worked heavily with Stephen Castellano to get it embedded as part of. So as I understand it, every time Blackboard restarts for the semester, there has to be a designated shell, and there's different changes that had to be submitted early on, and it goes to whatever process it is. We went with Stephen and said we want this put in. We want the link to be called that. And once he enabled that the link can be there, we went in, as John explained, on the back end and worked with SpringShare to make sure to set a default guide, to set the parameters of education courses, any course that has EDU, match it with the education courses, and then the e-reserves, et cetera, et cetera. But it really all starts with your Blackboard administrator. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, it does. It does. And, I was asking because while you were demonstrating before, I went to my Blackboard course just to try to find that link, and I have not found it yet. So, I'm in course tools. I'm in the course tools.
But which institution are you at?
I'm sorry. I thought she meant on the screen. I'm at Bronx Community College.
Okay, so I don't know your specific course instance, but I do know that most of the CUNYs have a direct link to their library website at the top. That's actually always been kind of, again, part of like the template. This really goes a step further. So no, you would not, because as far as I know, they haven't had it set up. I mean, you can confirm with the library to make sure, but if this is something that you felt that, other instructors would really benefit from and the students would like, your first step would probably be to speak to the library and talk to them. And then they would probably initiate the conversation with Blackboard and the Blackboard administrator. What you can do though now in the interim is, if there are research guides that your library has, or links and things, you can insert those yourself into Blackboard. And that's kind of something professors have been doing all along. This technology kind of lets someone else kind of do it for you, but also kind of streamlines it. And you can work with your librarian for that. So if you wanted if you were using an ebook as a textbook, as an example, you can work with your librarian and they can show you how to do that. Or if you want to do it yourself, you can copy and paste a direct link from the library to that book into Blackboard, and it will show up.
And then put it in my menu.
Exactly.
Got it. I got it. Yes, because we do have a standard Bronx CC library link, as you said, right when you come into. I understand now what you're saying. Thank you so much. I appreciate. This was great for me. It's exactly what I was looking for.
Oh, I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we appreciate your questions too.
Sure.
All right, last call for other questions. Otherwise, I think we're over our time.
We've officially been changed from 11:30 to 12. We actually have more time. We won't take up.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Unless there are
Yeah. Just to let everyone know, the first sessions have been rechanged to start from 11:30, so it should end at 12.
Okay.
Well, since no one's taking advantage,
please go ahead.
Listen, I'm going to eat. It's a buffet today. So you guys mentioned licensing before. I want to know, do we have to seek out any permissions or anything, or can we legally just go in and link a particular book just based on the fact that our library has access to it?
That's a great question. So if your library has access to it, there is no problem. Where there is really no problem with it. So if you go into OneSearch, which is typically what we use to find an ebook, and your library has in one of the collections, you can put, there's something called a permalink, and that's, I'll actually share my screen since we have a time. I'll go back to that slide with the guide that has the ebook specified so that I can show you what I mean. So here. So for example, in this one, I have to go, hold on a minute. Go make it, let me click. So in this example, this is a guide, but let's just say you were in your Blackboard course shell. This is what we call a permalink that directly goes to the ebook. And if you were to find this book, and I think I still have it over here in the library catalog, OneSearch, where it says share link to book, this is a permanent link. This link will work hopefully no matter what, that essentially they click on it. If you were just clicking on it, not in Blackboard, you verify that you are Bronx Community affiliated. So either your CUNY Pierce credentials or your barcode, whatever it is, and you're taken directly to this screen. From this standpoint, there is no licensing problem. Where licensing could be an issue is with e-reserves, that I know that sometimes faculty do upload materials that they find. That is where it can get a little more, I don't want to say dicey, or a little more questionable. That's also, I didn't speak about this, but this is also one of the advantages of going to the library for e-reserve, is that we will take care, most libraries will take care of this for you, and that if you say, oh, I want to use a lot, I really want to use as much of this book as I can, they'll say, okay, but legally within copyright, you can use X amount. But, and once you use X amount, if you want to use a Y amount, we have to take X amount away from view. And that's all within copyright restrictions. But as far as the licensing, these books are also generally either a subscription or they're actually purchased. So this is exactly what it's designed to do.
Right. And that's why I'm wondering, because this screen share actually addresses my next question, which was about downloading. So a student in general would be able to download the ebook and essentially have this electronic copy, and there's no issue with that.
They can download it. There is usually a limit. The electronic resources librarian, which is actually what I do, usually will set the limit. I think they're mostly set to 30 days. But what we've also found is while students can, of course, download the whole book and read it on an iPad or on a phone, sometimes they also prefer this kind of slice and dice method where they download chapters and PDFs. That way they just have chapter 3 in their Google Drive or in their email or whatever, and they read it when they're required to read chapter 3. But most ebooks have both. It does get the 1 user license and the 3 user licenses is where it gets a little more tricky. But what's nice is that that's all dictated by the publisher. So if there were limitations, you see how it says how many pages you're allowed to copy, how many you're allowed to print. If there were further limitations that they weren't allowed to download the book for some reason, even though I really haven't seen that, any other limitations would be here. And as you can see, this book is actually limited. There's only 3 copies. And like I mentioned, from what I understand, this course is a 3-section course, is 160 students. So at some point, someone will go in and won't be able to use it. But hopefully, with a little bit of maneuvering and foresight of the students, which of course they have, and they're so good about it, they'll download. I'd like to think they'll download everything or as much as they can once or twice, and then they don't have to necessarily go back in.
And I have to give kudos to this publisher because they have multiple options for reading it. You can read it online, you can download it, you can download PDFs. A lot of students prefer the PDFs because if they email them to themselves, there's no restriction. Some of the other ebook publishers, you can only view it while you're online, or you have to have a special software if you're using it on your mobile phone. So I would recommend you become aware of those potential restrictions. And know, especially also what Michelle said about the 3 copies, know that if you told your whole class, everyone, let's open up the book, that then it will not work for the whole class. But these are restrictions you can get around. And it's very similar to the old reserve system where we'd have a copy or 2 behind the desk. And but now it's online, so you don't have to worry about getting there, scheduling, and all of that stuff.
Right. That's the generation I'm from. Thank you. This was so helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course, our pleasure. I'm glad. Is that our cue?
I guess so.
Thank you. Okay. So
All right.
we don't have Danny. We don't. Oh, sorry, spoke too soon. Did I hear someone say something?
I hear typing. Maybe another question via the chat.
We'll give it another minute or so. Yeah.
All right, seeing nothing else. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for listening to our presentation. If you have any other additional questions, please feel free to reach us. We can leave our emails in the chat.
Yes, thank you all very much. Sorry about the little bit of technical, but thanks for sticking with us, and we hope you did find this helpful. And yes, definitely, if you think this is a technology that you'd like to see at from your library at your campus, definitely reach out. First reach out to your library, who will really work with you. Just in general, this idea of ebooks as textbooks has actually been one that's been around some time, but given the pandemic and given the lack of physical access to the physical books, this has really been a very big whole shift in the way of thinking. And we work, we've heard a lot of really good feedback from students and student government and on committees that we serve that the students love this. And we're really happy to provide it. When we're in person at the reference desk, the initial barrage of questions we get at the beginning of the semester is, do you have my textbook? And whenever we can find it, we're so happy. Or we also have a system where they can borrow it. And the students have been lacking that. And I don't need to go on a soapbox and tell you that times are hard for everyone. And if we can alleviate that from a cost standpoint, but also from an information standpoint and from an access standpoint, it's really a great service that we've done. And we're very grateful to our Blackboard administrator and to CUNY and to our library that we've been able to do this service. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, Danny, for your assistance.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.